This is the Homeschool Show from North Carolinians for home education. Our mission is to help you homeschool with confidence and joy. And Rhonda is here to laugh with me or at me.
Yeah.
Glad you're here.
Well, maybe both today, right? Or you can
right.
laugh at me too. We've got a great show planned for you today. Our first segment will be our homeschool conversation. Matthew had a talk with Andrew Pudewa, who is the founder of the Institute for Excellence in Writing. And in that, Matthew talked about, ask him, how can we help our children remember what they are learning? Mm-hmm. That's a good question.
Yeah.
And next we'll have our homeschool tip of the week, which is tailor each child's education to fit their individual needs. And we'll give you some practical tips on how you can do that. And finally, we'll have our homeschool reality moment. I love this one.
Yeah.
Where we take a look at what is going on in real homeschools, just like yours. Submit yours on the homepage for our podcast.
Right.
So, yeah.
Good. Exciting. Well, let's dive into the conversation I had with Andrew Pudewa. We were able to sit down and talk for quite a while. In this segment, as Rhonda said, is when I was able to ask the question, how can we help our kids remember stuff? And I can remember that I was in a particular moment in home education, with some of my kids where they were having a really hard time remembering some of the things that we were talking about. So I really appreciated Andrew's answer. So let's take a look at that and see what he had to say.
What about, how do we think about short-term or long-term memory, or teaching students to know how to learn or remember things or put them in that short long-term memory?
When you're trying to learn anything, there's three variables: frequency, or repetition; intensity, or the strength or impact of the experience; and duration, which would be a persistence over time. So frequency, intensity, and duration. These variables are always present. When one is stronger, then the others can be weaker. And so we kind of learn different things in different ways. I think we learn things like multiplication tables, primarily using frequency, right? And it's third grade. Okay, we're going to learn this. There's flashcards. We're not going to do anything else till the math facts up to 12 times 12, and this is not negotiable, And we use frequency. Cramming for a test is kind of like that. You're saying, if I say this to myself 10 times, maybe I'll remember it until 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Now, math being cumulative, which is, there's really only two things that are cumulative. They're skills, and that would be, from an academic point of view, would be math and language, right? I suppose you would throw in arts like music or dance or whatever, but if you study a foreign language, you can't be forgetting words you learned, or pretty soon you've forgotten it and you can't do it anymore. Same thing with math. If you forget your math fact, you cannot possibly do algebra. So cumulative things have built into them, in addition to the frequency, a duration aspect. Intensity is anything that affects you more powerfully. Getting back to that dopamine oxytocin idea, if you think back in, like, when you were in third grade, and try to remember something from third grade.
Well, I remember multiplication.
Yeah.
And I remember my teacher trying to teach me multiplication. Okay.
So, very often, people who go back in their memory and say, what can I remember? It's either something dramatic or maybe painful. I don't remember my teacher at all. I don't remember anything about third grade, except that I stapled my finger. That's all I remember from that whole year. I can't think of a single person. I have no visual image of the room I was in, nothing, big blank. But I remember stapling my finger. However, you could staple your finger and forget about it. The thing that sticks with me is that the teacher said, no, you got a paper cut. And I said, no, I stapled my finger. I know I stapled my finger. She said, no, I think you just got a paper cut. And to this day, right, the outrage of not being believed by my teacher. That's my only.
Of course, a guy knows.
That's
if
my
he
only
stapled
memory,
his
you know.
Finger.
So that had high intensity, right, and zero repetition, right. That was a strong enough thing that I would never forget it. Duration is really when you reinforce repetition over time. So let's say I wanted to teach you something. I want you to learn the Japanese word for toilet. Might be useful someday. So I say, could you please give me your cell phone, your work phone, your home phone, and any other phone that you might be at, because I'm going to call you 5 times a day for the next 7 days and remind you of this Japanese word for toilet. Would you know this after 7 days?
I think I would.
Yeah, you'd know it after about the second day. You'd be, I got it. Oh, Benjo, okay? Benjo, just don't call me anymore. Now, if there was no reinforcement over time, you might forget that. But that would be an appeal to frequency. Mm-hmm. Appeal to intensity, I would say, well, I'm going to tell you this one word, one time, and you're not going to hear it again. You can't go look it up. And if you know this 1 year from now, I will give you $1 million in gold bullion, tax-free. Will you know this word? Oh yeah, because the intensity, you will fixate. You'll be afraid to sleep, right? I could also use the opposite form of intensity and say, I'm going to tell you this one time, there'll be no reinforcement, and if you don't remember it a year from now, I kill you. Right? Now, the gold works better because the fear of death impedes learning, but that's an appeal, right? And we use that to some degree. Anything that makes you laugh. If I say I before E, you say?
Except after C.
Yeah, why? Because it rhymes, because it might have been useful. You know, it's just something that everybody got somewhere along the line, even though it's only true a percentage of the time. And then the best thing is, if I really wanted to teach you this, instead of calling you 5 times a day for 7 days, I call you once a week for 35 weeks. You'd have lifetime retention on that.
Okay.
You see? So spaced repetition is really the key. Now, what we do know is that some children need more repetition than others to get the same thing. Some children are naturally able to memorize spelling words and or math facts, sometimes one but not the other. This is why the system where everybody does the same thing in the same way according to the same schedule with the same amount of repetition will always fail some children and always bore other children.
All right, that was Andrew Pudewa with the Institute for Excellence in Writing, and I've always enjoyed talking with him. It's fun
so
to
fun.
talk to
He's
him.
such a great speaker.
Yeah. And I was wondering, do you remember stuff from elementary school? Did you have anything like that? Did you staple your finger?
I didn't staple my finger, but I'm wondering, is that the method to help kids remember?
That's right. Look, we're going to learn this math fact, and I'm going to staple your finger.
So it'll stick. You'll never forget it.
Or
ever
use
again.
the threat of death, like you said. Okay, let's get back on track here. I think the idea here, of course, is that so often we're trying to convey information, and then it's discouraging, right? When, of course, we'll be at the dinner table, and Dana will say, "Hey, kids, tell Dad what you learned today," and they're like looking around, looking at each other. It's like,
did I learn
"Can you
anything?
give me a prompt, Mom? Can you help me out?" And she's like, "Oh my goodness, we just did this, you know."
How could you forget already?
And so, of course, they can't remember everything, but we do want them to learn. We want them to remember some stuff. And so we're about to get into some tips on how to take what he's talking about here and individualize it for the kids. But before we do that, did you know that NCHE is an affiliate partner now with Institute for Excellence in Writing?
Can't think of a better company to be an affiliate partner with.
IEW's mission is to equip teachers and teaching parents with methods and materials which will aid them in training their students to become confident and competent communicators and thinkers Using the 4 language arts, listening, speaking, reading, and writing IEW methods have been proven to be effective for students of all ages and levels of ability, including those who are gifted, have special needs, or are English language learners. If you'd like to enjoy products from IEW, which we do at our house,
we have
we've used
lots of them.
If you'd like to do that and support NCHE, which is a great idea, you can do it at the same time by going to the special link in our show notes. We have a special affiliate link in our show notes. You can purchase things from IEW and support NCHE at the same time. And of course, you can find the show notes on the show page, nche.com/The Homeschool Show, or YouTube or your podcast. So you can check that out. So we'll go right into our tip of the week, which is tailor each child's education to fit their individual needs. And this fits perfectly into what Andrew said at the end, which is if you do the traditional model where everyone learns the same thing at the same time, at the same pace, you're going to have a lot of people failing, struggling, or being bored.
Yes.
Right? So this is our tip. Make sure that you understand where your kids are and their pacing. You know, there's a lot of differences. Boys and girls are different.
They are. They learn
Their
at different
interests are
paces.
different. Yeah, their paces are different. There's so many differences to think about. So what we want to do now is say, what can we do to individualize the education to help them remember things?
Yeah. So hopefully these are some creative ideas of ways that you can individualize. I can say that, right?
Yeah.
Their education. One thing I think it's important to remind ourselves of when we look at our kids, and they are so different, just like Andrew talked about, some kids are just naturally good at memorizing. And I had some of those. They loved it. They thrived on it. Then I had others that it was major struggle to get it done.
Same here.
But it's important to remind ourselves as we look at our different children that God gave you the children exactly the ones he wanted you to have. And they have their special giftings and their special challenges, just like all of us do. But if you will ask him and depend on him and walk with him each day, he will show you how to help your kids retain knowledge, how to best teach them for their individual needs.
That's great.
I think that's so, because your homeschool is unique to you and your family, and that's super important. Now, let's talk about some practical things, because that's what I like to talk about.
Yeah.
But some kids are like me. I can see a word. I'm visual as a speller, so I can see a word in my head and generally spell it correctly. But to help, but not all kids are like that.
Right.
And it's important for us to realize that. And especially if you're a natural speller as a parent, then you as a teacher, you're assuming that your child is. And that's not
everybody's
always
good
the
at that,
case.
right?
Yeah, surely everyone can see a word in their head. But to help kids input information in their brains and retain it, in general, if we can input it in a number of different modalities, it's going to help them click in their brain. And I mainly learned this. It was not smart stuff I made up. It's things I learned along the way in 26 years of homeschooling. I had a son that had dyslexia. And these are tips that not only work with dyslexic children, but also all children in helping them cement knowledge. So it's helpful if you look at it in a different way. So say that you have a word. You can look at a spelling card with a word, but what if you did it like this one? I'm going to describe it, but it has the trouble letter is a different color on your spelling card so that kids can look at that and see, oh, well, normally I might misspell once because it doesn't sound like a O at the beginning. Okay. O-N-C-E. So the O is red. N-C-E is black. That's just one example of one way that you can input it in a different way. So they're seeing that visually. Then you ask them to visualize it in their mind. Then they can write it using their fingers because you want the tactile, either on a counter, that works too, or if you're creative, which I'm not that creative, but you can use cornmeal like on a cookie sheet, so they have more of a tactile feel. Spell the word. Then they can say it verbally. spell the word out loud. And then finally, they can write it down if you'd like them to. Also, they should try to see the word in their head after they've seen the card with the special colored letter on it. But that's just one example, and you could utilize that same approach in a number of different disciplines where your child might be struggling in retaining facts. Also, make it a game. My son, that we had this is one stack of cards I pulled out. Every card he got
these are
right.
real cards.
These are real cards.
These are the real
These are the real deal. They
that's
have little
nice.
check marks for when he got them and everything.
Cool.
So every time
These are artifacts.
they are. They're vintage because I'm vintage. So when he would get it right, he got to keep the card.
Okay.
And then so
Cool.
his goal was to have a huge stack
How
of
many he
cards,
could get, yeah.
and I would just have a few. So you can make it everything, I think, in a game. Now, great traditional textbooks are great, but a lot of kids need these extra little things to help them retain their information. Also, games can be learning tools, just regular games like Scrabble or Chutes and Ladders, learning counting with little ones. There's also educational games you can just buy. Like this is Borderline. I think these are still around, but it's a geography game for the U.S. You can get it for different countries or continents. So it just helps kids learn geography facts. There's also some that I've used over the years. Hail to the Chief. It's a game, a board game about the presidents. So you can make learning fun like that. Also, Made for Trade was a game that we played that was about colonial America. So you're learning about the different trades in colonial America. So you can incorporate those, or like Scrabble for spelling. You can play a game with them so they can hopefully.
How about Monopoly?
There you go. Learning money. There you go. It works.
We like
Learn
Monopoly.
to conquer.
Yeah, that's right.
Learn to conquer. Of course, for math facts, you can use flashcards, but there's also some games or devices that you could use. One thing that I actually looked this up because my kids like this so much. It's called Flashmaster. I'm not selling it.
Yeah.
But I don't think they make them you can probably get
Here, I'll hold it
vintage
for you.
ones online, but there's actually an app that you can get for an iPad or a tablet that you can set it where if your kid is freaked out by having a timer, you turn off the timer. But you can do all their various math facts on here. It's almost like a little game, so they think it's fun. But it's just a different way to input the information in their head rather than just a worksheet that you're using. Let's see.
And of course, now I've seen, and we've used some, there are apps for iPads and iPhones or whatever device you have that are like math games as well.
Exactly.
To look up.
You can absolutely
Yep.
look those things up. And there's so many different ones online. I've seen spelling apps online that help your children with their spelling words. You can input those. There's also history ones. There's even games that have to do with writing, like help you construct a sentence. I mean, it's the sky's the limit. Also, what do you think? Oh, music. Have you ever thought about using music to learn facts? Again, I have a CD. I think in the last episode I had a CD. But I think these are available online. But this is like history facts, but you can do math facts, language facts, all kinds of things that you can utilize to help
music,
input
yeah.
that. True confessions, we used to try to teach our kids Spanish. We actually lived in Spain for about 3 months, so we were trying to teach them Spanish. So we had a cassette tape yes, that's how old I am. Yes, cassette tape and a pencil. What is the relation? But we had a cassette tape with songs that were in Spanish to help learn. And I could probably literally, I will spare you, but I could probably literally sing them to you now. But just something about the music gets in there and does that. Another thing that we used was called learning wrap-ups. And I didn't bring any today, but they're little plastic cards that you wrap up. So it might be math facts. And so this is the 9 card. On one side, it has all the various multiplications times 9. And then the opposite side is the answer. And of course, they're random. So then you use a lace and wrap those up to see if you're right. And on the back of it, it shows where the laces should go.
Interesting.
So you can make sure that you're correct.
Okay.
So just simple things like that. You could even make something simple like that. Also think about audiobooks that you can listen to. Again, you can get those at the library. Lots of different things. They even have games and things that you can utilize at the library to help and check those out, and they're free. But having audio, I don't know does Dana get tired of reading aloud? Do you do some of that? I'm sure you do in your home.
Yep, we read aloud, but we have piles of audiobooks.
Yes, because audio, sometimes Mama's voice gets tired, or Mama just needs to put her feet up for a while. And I think the audiobooks are a good option. And you can even rent those or check them out online on the library websites.
That's right.
It's amazing to me. Also, things that sound extremely simple but are profoundly important are that lots of kids need to move when they are learning.
Yep, that's right.
And if you have the school paradigm in your head, I thought, and I'm a type A anyway, my children should be completely still and sitting there when I'm teaching them. But oftentimes they need to do something silly like, okay, every time you see a math fact, I want you to jump one space ahead, or stand up, sit down, or we had a trampoline. Let's go out and do your math facts on the trampoline. Just that movement helps those kids that need to have movement in order to learn, put that information in there.
So I was a movement kid. I've told it on the show before, but my mom used to teach me how to memorize scripture by letting me run around the pond at the park. So she would tell me a phrase or a line, and I would run around the pond while I was reciting that and come back and say it to her, and then she'd give me another one. And I just had to keep running or I would never remember it.
Oh, I love that because that is so true and it's so helpful. And your mom, she was a pioneer homeschooler and didn't know it.
That's right.
But it's so important that your mom recognized that. It's important for us as parents to recognize that our kids have different needs, often, very often in my fact, different than me. Another thing that oftentimes we use a grammar book when we're doing, our English, which is great. But there's also hands-on grammar that you can do if your kid needs a little more help. This Winston grammar has cards for each of the parts of speech. So you have a sentence, and then you put, this is a noun, that's a verb. So it's color-coded, and you make your sentences that way. Some kids just need to see things in a visual way like that rather than just notating things in a notebook or a textbook to get things done. Also, I want to talk about having science and history ideas. Maybe we read aloud. Lots of parents read aloud to their kids for science and history. But maybe you're wanting to help solidify some ideas for them. So some ideas that you can get from the library, or get some science experiment books related to what you're talking about that week. And then oftentimes they require simple household items. Those are the kind I love.
Yeah, already got it.
Yeah, already have it. Or maybe you have to pick up a couple little items. But then they can solidify their learning by doing hands-on activities. And this can relate to also history. Say we're reading, here's one. I love the Tailor books. And this one is about George Washington. They have a whole collection of really good books. But, so that's during colonial America. So to help solidify learning for my kid, I might pick this up at the library. It's about colonial kids, and it has different activities, different things you can do as a kid to help solidify your learning. But all these are by Lori Carlson. She has a whole slew of them. She has ones about damsels in distress, from knights and castles. There's a whole bunch of them that you can look at. Israel, that you can help solidify learning. And finally, I want to tell you, make sure to look at educational videos like YouTube. You have to be careful, but use those like Khan Academy or the Smarter Every Day I just heard about, and also the Action Lab.
Great.
So some great, hopefully good ideas
that
to
is
help.
a pile of ideas.
Sorry,
Thanks,
I got a
Rhonda.
literal
that's
pile.
Great. That's perfect. That's so helpful. And our Homeschool Reality Moment actually takes us right in to this exact thing, because Amanda's going to show us how she's adjusted to teaching her son in a certain way. So let's see what Amanda's going to tell us.
All right, y'all. This is my homeschool reality moment. First of all, it is noon and my 12-year-old is still in bed because he is almost 13 and he loves to sleep. And I have discovered that both of us are a lot happier if I just let him sleep And then when he gets up, we get his schoolwork done. Everybody's more productive, happier, it gets done quicker, all is well. But that leads to it being noon and he's not up yet. There are his school books ready to go, but he's not here. He'll be down shortly, and then we'll get school done. No problem.
That's great. You know,
I love that one.
we were just talking about how different ages have different needs and seasons. And so
Yes.
if it's 12, 13 and it's hormone time, you might have to have some extra sleep or who knows what.
Absolutely.
Some extra patience for
Extra
sure.
patience for sure.
Well, we're so glad that you joined us today. And we want to invite you to visit our website, which is nche.com/the homeschool show, where you can get the notes and see what's going on. If you will please subscribe to this show on YouTube and on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you're using, that would be great. Maybe rate it, leave a review, share it with your friends. We just want as many families as possible who could be benefited by this to find out about it and to be able to enjoy it. If you want to give us some feedback, you can email us at thehomeschoolshow@nche.com. Give us your questions, give us your ideas, send us your homeschool reality moment, and we would love to see it. So until next time, continue to homeschool with confidence and joy.